Early voting has come to a close. Now all attention turns towards Tuesday's primary election. And with the mayoral race and House and Senate seats up for grabs, we take a look at some of the big factors leading into voters' decisions. Also, it was a dazzling finish to the Kentucky Derby. So will Mystic Dan attempt to run at the Triple Crown? We'll check in with WBAL News Radio's Scott Wyckoff. Hello everyone, I'm Jason Newton. Welcome to 11 TV Hill. In just 2 days, voters will make their choice for who they want to represent them at City Hall and in the halls of Congress. 3 longtime members of Maryland's congressional delegation are not seeking re-election, but 3 prominent political faces are each trying to become Maryland's next U.S. Senator. And here in Baltimore, the mayoral election is in some ways like the last election, yet in this case, one of the former candidates is now the incumbent. Joining us to talk a lot about this is Ian Anson. He's from UMBC. Good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me, Jason. Appreciate it.
There is a level, I think, of flair in this election. Wherever you go, people are talking about it and they have a race in mind. Absolutely. What do you think is giving it the juice this time around?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely an election that has made headlines, right, across the various candidates. We've had twists and turns to this race, I think, especially with the collapse of the bridge,
sure.
With the national spotlight on local politicians, obviously incumbent Brandon Scott figuring in that sort of conversation at that time, but also these sort of bombshell right, developments, twists and turns where have one candidate, Thiro Vignarajah, dropping out of the race, at least informally, and we can talk about.
Let's talk about that, because his name will still be on the ballot.
Exactly right.
And so the interesting part is, well, what will his camp do? Right. And how could that affect the other 2 candidates? What do you feel could be the effect here? Yeah,
so this is a really interesting example of a candidate dropping out. I mean, dropping out of a race is not unprecedented, right? I mean, even in 2020, I believe State Senator Mary Washington dropped out of the race, but that was in March and the primary was in June. So there was a much longer lead time for voters to process, to digest that information. Now, I mean, this was an incredibly close call right up until essentially the beginning of early voting. Sure. And of course, we also have the popularity of mail-in balloting as well, which really confounds things for voters who may have already filled out a ballot prior to this announcement. So this is an incredibly sort of idiosyncratic, I guess, sort of development in a race like this, because I think it really raises the question of what are voters going to do in response to that.
And 2 of the other candidates who remain in that race, one an incumbent, so they have something going for you there. And then there's the likability of Sheila Dixon, who, regardless of what she went through in the past, it seems like her camp is still pretty strong.
Right, yeah, I mean, so some of the polling that we've been able to see, and obviously there's a huge shout out to my colleague at Goucher College, Malia Cromer, who does a wonderful job with the Goucher poll. It's a very, very high quality scientific poll. Shows that, at the stage when that poll was conducted, Brandon Scott had a sizable, a lead beyond the margin of error in that poll relative to the other candidates. However, obviously, Thiro dropping out really raises questions about where those votes are going to potentially go among the votes that haven't already been counted for Thiro in the early voting period.
The governor's made a point saying that he's going to stay out of this local race. How much do you think an endorsement from the sitting governor now would mean to a candidate? And is it surprising to you that he stayed out of it?
Yeah, not entirely surprising. Okay. I mean, I think that politicians always want to remain somewhat strategic about this, because after all, a governor is going to have to be the partner of a future mayor. Sure. And so if the tea leaves are very hard to read at this stage, it might be the case that, the more administration says, we're just going to kind of wait, we'll provide, everything up to, a formal endorsement, just so that we're able to form a partnership with whoever ends up being mayor in the next cycle. But I mean, that's one endorsement out of a wide variety of endorsements that have already come through for these various candidates.
Sure.
All of these things really, as a political scientist, right, these things help voters to make decisions, more informed decisions. And so I think if we look across the sort of panoply of different endorsements that we've seen for these various candidates, Governor Moore's lack of endorsement notwithstanding, I think voters already have a very clear picture of sort of the sort of approach that these different candidates would take to the mayorship.
We'll go from a current governor to a former one. Former Governor Hogan maintains that he's an underdog. Then you have also Brooks and Trone. Those numbers seem like it's like scales. They go back and forth. Absolutely. Right now it seems like also Brooks has a slight edge. Will this go down to Tuesday?
Yeah, so for the mayoral election, as much as this election, we only have a small amount of publicly available polling. I know obviously the campaigns are doing a lot of internal polling. They probably know more than what we do about where exactly the race stands. But as of right now, it's anyone's game, I think, for a variety of these races, including the Democratic primary for the Senate. It's going to be incredibly close, I think, and it'll be very interesting to see, especially as we continue to see the ad campaigns ramping up and the spend. But I do want to also mention that, you know, we had 600,000 or so mail-in ballots that have already been delivered to voters, and many of those ballots have already been returned. We're going to continue to count those ballots after the early voting period is concluded. So basically next week, we're going to begin opening those up again. The State Board of Elections is going to keep counting that tally. So many of the votes are already in for these races. So for those voters who are voting on Election Day, obviously that's going to be very determinative. But it's kind of exciting to think that all that campaigning, all that stumping up to the last minute, some of those votes are already in the can. So,
oh my gosh!
So we may you know, have a lot to learn. I think
we could have answers on Tuesday.
Exactly.
Then again, we may not.
Yeah. Well, that's always We
appreciate you coming by.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.